will have attained true freedom in this world when you can get up in the morning when you want to get up, go to sleep when you want to go to sleep, and in the interval, work and play at the things you want to work at, play at.
You're listening to Life 2, a podcast from Don Ezra and Commonwealth. Don Ezra is a former co-chair of Russell Investments Global Consulting and creator of the retirement website donezra.com. His latest book is Life 2, How to Get to and Enjoy What Used to Be Called Retirement. Commonwealth is a mission-driven business that works with associations, unions, and employers to provide collective retirement plans and has been recognized internationally for its work in expanding access to retirement security. On Life 2, we take a tour of the retirement life cycle, from the time you start saving to your retirement years, while also taking a look at the Global Retirement Challenge. Each episode features an in-depth interview with a leading expert on the topic, followed by The Personal Touch, a segment in which Don breaks down these expert insights and how they might apply to your personal situation. Keep in mind that the podcast is for educational purposes and should not be considered investment, tax, financial, or other professional advice. We start off the episode with Commonwealth's founding partner, Alex Mazer.
It is time to get in touch with our feelings because, as we all know, money is deeply tied to our emotions. How does one psychologically prepare for retirement? One of the scariest aspects is how you find a sense of purpose in life too, and how you'll fill your time, and how you'll coordinate activities with your partner.
One of the world's best-selling authors on retirement joins us on the show to tell us how to make plans that transform your mindset from fear to eager anticipation. Ernie Zelinski is also a prosperity life coach, a professional speaker, and an unconventional career expert who's helped hundreds of thousands of individuals with his life-changing books, The Joy of Not Working and How to Retire Happy, Wild and Free. He speaks to us from Edmonton, Alberta in Canada. Ernie, we are just so thrilled to have you here. I've read everything you've written probably, and love it all. And so the idea that I get to chat with you and Alex, this is just fantastic. And one initial question is just, what started you thinking about these matters?
Oh, well, that's kind of a long story. So way back when in 1980, I was an engineer with Edmonton Power. I've been there for 5.5 years, and I wanted to take 2 months vacation, and they didn't allow me to, so I took it anyway. And then I come back to work for about a month and a half, and they fired me, and it was kind of traumatic at the time, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I haven't had a regular job since. But so for the first 2 years, I really decided to not do anything aside from enjoy leisure time. So I wasn't going to school of any type, and I wasn't working. And it was during those 2 years, 1980 to 82, that I had the idea, in 81, I should write a book on how to handle leisure time. But I thought, who am I to write a book? I failed English 3 times in engineering, and so I thought, well, how could I write a book? Anyway, after 2 years, my money, whatever money I had, ran out, and I went back to school to survive on student loans and got more and more into debt. And then I taught briefly. I went and got an MBA, and then I taught briefly at a private vocational school for about, I think it was 14 or 16 months. And then I didn't know what to do, so I decided to become a public speaker. And to become a public speaker, you have to have some credibility. And so I did a book on creativity back in 1989 called The Art of Seeing Double or Better in Business. But in 1991, I finally got around to doing my book on leisure called The Joy of Not Working. And it was subtitled A Book for the Retired, Unemployed, and Overworked. And so anyway, the book did very well. Just for the record, between 1981 and 1991, that's the time time I was 32 to 42, my total income for those 10 years was somewhere between $75,000 and $80,000. So I averaged $7,500 to $8,000 a year in income. Okay, and so just to go to show what you can live on if you really have to. And I never considered myself poverty-stricken, even though that $10,000 was probably the poverty line for a single person. But we had some really good times during that time because there was a recession going on, and we got together. Yeah, but in 1991, I did The Joy of Not Working, and it really took off. There was a recession going on, and people were bringing out books on how to keep your job in a recession and how to find a job in a recession. And I come out with a book called The Joy of Not Working. Well, guess who got all the publicity? This went on for at least 5 years, selling 10,000 copies a year in Canada and getting all the publicity right from, actually it went on for longer than that because I was on Venture in 1995. They sent a crew down from Toronto, Venture, the entrepreneur program. They sent me down to, they sent down a crew to follow me around for a day, and then in the year 2000, CBC National News sent a crew down, 4 people following me around for 2 days. It was a segment with Tom Alderman. And anyway, I can send you a link to where those things a friend put me those on about me being interviewed. But yeah, so that's where kind of it all started, and then I started making a bit of money in 1995 and 1991. Yeah, that's when I started making the money, and then I did other books along the way. Lazy Person's Guide to Success, sold a lot of foreign rights, and it wasn't till there was a guy from California was a big fan of my book, The Joy of Not Working, and a guy in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he wanted to write a book strictly on retirement with me, but I thought, no, I don't really want to do a book with someone else. So I thought, but he kind of gave me the idea to do a book strictly on retirement, and that's when I brought out How to Retire Happy, Wild, and Free in 2003, and since then it's done very well. It's now at 390,000 copies. Joy of Not Working is at 310,000 copies. And just one other thing I do want to mention here, I'd like to mention now, I wasn't mentioning this before, but talking about my living under income under $80,000 for 10 years, I also was brought up on a farm until I was 14, and we never had running water, we never had power, and we didn't have a telephone. And we moved to Lac La Biche when I was 14. But I tell people, see, those are wants. They're not needs. Electricity is a want. Running water is a want. Telephones a want. Cell phones a want. They are not needs. All your needs have always been provided for, otherwise you would be dead. And interesting, I've been saying that for a long time, in Seth Godin's new book, I'm a big fan of Seth Godin, the marketing guru, and he says in his book, the first is that people confuse wants and needs. What we need is air, water, health, and a roof over our heads. Pretty much everything else is a want. So anyway, that's how I became very good at handling money, because I really got the concept of wants and needs. Practically everything is a want. So I always, can talk myself out of buying something if I'm thinking about buying, and I've become very, very good at handling money. Yeah.
Fantastic. So among the conclusions you've come to, because these are sort of, I'm just taking them from the titles and subtitles of your book, you talk about why retirement rocks and work sucks, retiring happy, wild, and free. So the idea that we're actually moving from those of us who work are moving from a life, from one life to another life 1 to life 2 as I think of it, where life 2 is the one we really want. This is obviously a very strong theme with you.
Yeah, it is. Well, see, the thing is, there's some people that have a hard time with retirement, and they continue to work into their 80s and 90s. Take Jimmy Pattison out of Vancouver, the billionaire, and there's another billionaire up there, Hugh Siegel. He's 92 or 93. He goes to work every day. And then there's other people who And I'm kind of, I'd like to have my own purpose. I tell people if I won the $60 million Lotto Max, and there's a little interesting story I have about that. But I was saying I would still write books probably. I know these people think I'm silly, but I'd like to write books, just, keep my mind going, and just because I like writing books that help people. And on the other hand, I was just in Phoenix, Arizona, to visit a school friend from Grassland area where I was brought up on a farm. And his name's Ernie Zelinski. He lives in Phoenix. He had been in Delaware, but he moved there about 2-3 years ago. And he's fully retired, he and his wife. I said, well, what do you do? And he said, I've got all this and this. He's not working in any type of thing, like what we consider kind of a purpose. But he's playing pickleball, which I still haven't figured out what the heck that is, and something else. And get this, he gets up at 4:30 every morning. 4:30. I thought he's crazy. One of the aspects of retirement I like is to be able to sleep in till noon and feel very, very, very special that I can sleep in till noon while other people have to go to work and get up for other various reasons. But he goes to bed at 9:30 every night and gets up at 4:30. But he's got all these activities. He organizes the pickleball tournaments. So he's very, very happy in retirement. There's actually no problem for him at all. He's just filling his whole day with activities.
So that's a great angle that you mentioned. If you were to win the lottery, what would you do? The idea of what would still turn you on, that gives you some purpose, etc.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me tell you a little funny story about that. Okay, now about the lottery, there was a lottery. You were kind of maybe were aware of that big lottery draw in late October for equivalent of $1.5 billion in the United States. And but it wouldn't be $1.5 billion. That's spread over 20 years. And then if you take it out early in the United States, you get 30% tax, but you still wind up with, $800 million U.S. And no one had come forth with that. They knew the ticket was drawn in some place in the States, about 20,000 people, but no one had come forth, and there was no announcement, and there was conspiracy theories. But actually, when I was in Phoenix, my friend Ernie Zelinski said, no, someone just came forth the other day, and they chose to remain anonymous, which they can. But here's the thing. Around that same time, there was a Lotto Max here in Canada, draw of $60 million. It was October the 26th the draw was made. Well, the ticket was actually sold in Edmonton, where I live. And guess what? I have a ticket on that draw that I haven't checked out. It's sitting here in my computer bag. Yeah, I haven't checked it out. What do you think about that?
Wow, that just tells you that winning it is not all that important in your life.
Well, that's not important, but it can actually be a curse, right? Because if you win a lottery, that type of a lottery, if I won that lottery, if it's a winner, I'm going to have to disappear for a year or two in Honolulu or Vancouver because I'd be hounded by people. There's been people killed in the United States after they won lotteries, kidnapped, and that type of thing. Your life changes dramatically with $60 million, right? Now, I'd give actually probably half of it away to the University of Alberta and charities right away. I've already given money to charities. I gave $25,000 to the U of A Business School in 2016 for the Ernie Zelinski Distinguished Award for Individual Creativity. It's supposed to be awarded to students who display quirky brilliance at the university, but not on academic for academic reasons, right? And then I just gave another one to the engineering, because I have both an engineering and business degree. So I gave one to the Faculty of Engineering of $15,000 for an award of $3,000 a year for 5 years. But I also, in my will, I have allocated $300,000 for those 3 awards to be given away in perpetuity. But if I won the big lottery, I would definitely, I'd probably establish the Ernie Zelinski chair for individual creativity and innovation, because I'm a big proponent of creativity, of people, individual creativity, of people being creative and thinking in different ways. I even wrote a book on that, but I really like to challenge people to be more creative and innovative, and not just follow the what other people are doing now. One of my favorite quotes is, people get mad because when I quote this sometimes, but one of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein, well, there's two of them. The first one is he said, "Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds." And then there's the other one that I wasn't aware of until Dr. Wayne Dyer used it on a Facebook post, and people got really mad at him, but Wayne Dyer thought it was a great quote, so did I. And Einstein said, "Those who march in rank and file have already earned my contempt, because for them the spinal cord would have been sufficient for a brain." I love that quote.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, let's think about the average person who is working, hasn't won the lottery, doesn't have the prospect of doing it, and they have to, in their retirement, in their life too, they have to develop a sense of purpose and fill their time, because they love vacations. An extended vacation is better, but a permanent vacation, oh gosh, they're really scared of that. Now you have so much wisdom on all this. My advice to someone will be, buy Ernie's books. You'll get everything you need out of them. But what would you tell them on this show?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, we refer to page 103 in How to Retire Happy, Wealthy, and Free, where I have this little diagram of, and it has purpose, community, structure. Well, see, there's three things that a job provides us with that we have to try to get back into our lives once we retire, or we find ourselves unemployed. So we got to, find some sort of purpose. Whether can we, whether it could be just to enjoy leisure time to its fullest, like my friend Ernie Zelinski is doing, or it could be volunteering. It could be working on hobbies, side fun business where you don't really want to necessarily make money at it. But there's also this problem of community, sense of community, friends and stuff like that. And then there's the structure. Well, I have created a structure for myself by getting up at noon, sometimes earlier, and I do a few things. And the first thing I do is go for a bike ride for an hour, and I come back, have a shower, then I head over to the coffee place where I work on my laptop. I'm a digital nomad, which means my office is where my laptop and I happen to be, so it could be a coffee shop in Edmonton or London, England, or Honolulu. But anyway, I go to coffee places because, that's where I can establish a sense of community. I meet people. I meet a lot of friends, younger than me, older than me, same age as me. And so I'll work there, and then I'll come back home, and I may have a nap or do something, and then I'll go, in the evenings I go out to various restaurants or coffee places, but I kind of work on my projects here and there. But like I said, so it's very important to get that purpose and sense of community and structure back in your life. And, part of, I also advocate that I stress that one of the biggest essentials for having a happy retirement is to have friends. It's been proven that, that people who are happiest in later life, it doesn't even matter if that much if they've been married or if they have children, but what really matters is how many close friends they have. So that becomes very, very important. Your ability to make new friends too, because friends move or friends die and that type of thing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that structure, and it strikes me that a lot of those features are things that would be just good advice for life in general, and not for retirement. And I guess one thing I was thinking about as you were talking was, when we think about the financial side of retirement, often the advice that we and many people give is to start early, but it also strikes me that when you talk about friendships, when you talk about community, when you talk about purpose, those are things that it's probably worth starting to kind of work on and think about before you retire, because, if you take friends as an example, you can't, friendships don't emerge just overnight. Community doesn't emerge overnight. You have to kind of invest in those things over time.
Yeah, there's another very important aspect here to that. And there's a woman from the United States, I think her name is Jan Yeager. She's written several books on friendship, and she says that those people at work that you think are your friends, they're not really so-called friendships, they're workships, because in most cases, people after they retire, they don't really keep in contact with those friends from work. They think they will, but in most cases they don't. So they got to have friends, from other places. And because, like I said, the work friends are just kind of because you're doing kind of the same thing and you're there every day, but you don't really have kind of like the same values necessarily and all the other things. So, yeah, the friendship is very, very important for retirement. And like I said, that's why I'm doing okay, because I've got friends in Toronto. I'm going off to Vancouver tomorrow. I've got several friends in Vancouver. I've got several friends in Toronto, and I go to London once a year and Honolulu once a year. Still don't have friends there, but I now have a lot of friends in Edmonton. So this always adds to the enjoyment of my retirement.
Can I just ask you? There's a lot of books out there about retirement, and it just strikes me as an amazing accomplishment to have that many people, see value and make use of your books. And I'm wondering if in conversations with your readers, there are particular things that have jumped out to them as being, what they really got out of your writing about retirement.
So I've got a little letter here I could read. That's kind of almost a sad thing, but a guy from Honolulu, police officer. Well, okay, this is a letter I got May 10th, 2012 from Jack and Karen Cipriani, and they were in Sterling Heights, Michigan. Yeah, and I put this letter in the book because they're actually living retirement better than I am. I'm very envious of them. So the letter says, "Dear Ernie, I'm writing to you because my wife said I must. You see, we both read your books, The Joy of Not Working and How to Retire Happy, Well, and Free. In fact, we put much of your wisdom into practice. We both retired early. While we walked the dog one morning, Karen said that with all the new things we have done since retiring, that you might like to hear about some of them. Here they are in no particular order." He goes, "In the first year or so of our freedom," he goes, "I filed a provisional patent, taking the invention to prototype and began marketing it. She started a part-time job. I started a blog and built a website. She learned belly dancing. We hiked, birdwatched, and photographed eagles, owls, and wildlife, too numerous to list. Even an albino fawn with her mother. She joined a book reading club. We traveled with our dog Jedi throughout the southern United States. She learned to use power tools." And he goes on. And so we spent a winter in the Florida Panhandle. She does yoga. We made new friends in several states. I resumed fly fishing because of more time on the water. And he goes on, "We attended classes and seminars, including the Creative Retirement Workshop at the University of North Carolina in Asheville." He goes, "By the way, they cite your work in the workshop and recommend your book." And he said, and he goes on, we attended plays. And he goes, "There are probably many other things, but I cannot recall them at present. Karen and I are thrilled at having time each day for nature walks, bicycle riding, bird watching, and cruising in our classic sports car. The time together has strengthened our marriage, too. We worried about money initially, but now find we do just fine, even spending less than we did while working. In fact, we noticed work requires a significant outlay, even part-time. I believe working consumes more money than most people understand. Not working, on the other hand, provides untold wealth, health, and happiness. Thank you for writing the books you did. They have helped us on our path. Best wishes in health and happiness, Jack and Karen." So yeah, that's probably my favorite letter of all the letters I've gotten. And to me, I know it's very powerful, but all the things they've done, like I said, I'm very envious of them. They're living retirement better than I am.
Well, this is a living example of why retirement rocks, isn't it?
Yeah. And I did the new book, The Joy of Being Retired, 365 Reasons Why Retirement Rocks and Work Sucks. I did that just kind of as a book. It's a little different than How to Retire Happy, Wealthy, and Free. It's kind of more humorous and got cartoon figures, but it's reminders for people about why retirement can be great. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed this or not, Dawn, that there's not only 365 reasons in it. I keep telling people that there's no off switch on this genius machine. That's a term I borrowed from David Letterman, and I used all the time. And so I got so wound up on that book. When I got to 365 reasons, I took a while to wind down, so I put in another 50 bonus reasons. So it's actually got 415 reasons why retirement rocks and work sucks. Yeah, it's kind of a fun book.
I love the length of your lists. I remember when I was going through your Get a Life tree, which I'd like you to focus on in a moment, but when I was going through that, for those of us without enough of an imagination to even get to, let's say, 50 things we could put down, one of the things we could do is look at your list, and you had, I don't know how many, they were bullet points, so I didn't count, about 350 or so. And the one that got to me was the very last one that said, you want something to do? Expand this list of mine to 500. And I thought, God, isn't that just beautiful? You get right inside my head. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, okay, well, the Get a Life tree, yeah, for sure. That's a lot of people write to me about that. And so I'm, it's a tool that some people use. And if you actually Google the Get a Life tree, there's several people that comment, who I don't even know about, comment about my Get a Life tree, and there's some really creative ones made. But basically,
actually, if I may just interrupt, that was my introduction to you. I was looking at designing activities and Googling that, and kept coming across the Get a Life tree. And I thought, I don't want other people's comments on it. I want to go to the original. And that's when I got your book, and everything started in my life, if you like. My admiration for you started there, and then it's carried on. But okay, back to your Get a Life tree.
Yeah, well, first of all, the Get a Life tree is actually just a variation of, there was various names for it, but the guy that really made it famous is he called it a mind map, and his name's Tony Bazan, and he actually just passed away in the last week or week and a half. I encountered him back in '88 in Edmonton at Creativity Conference. I believe he was British, but born in Britain, but he actually went to school in Kitsilano in Vancouver, and he was even both at Simon Fraser and UBC. But he became very, very well known about his mind mapping, his books and stuff. He gave these seminars. And a friend of mine just told me he encountered him at Toastmasters. He was also a Toastmaster, a very incredible guy. But unfortunately, he just died of a massive heart attack here at about 76 or 77. So this my Get a Life tree is basically a variation of the mind map. It's just I called it a Get a Life tree, and how it works is doing like some people call it a spoke diagram, and there's other names for it, but let's call it a mind map. And how you create a Get a Life tree is you take a piece of paper, and in the center you put down options for my retirement, and then you start having branches extend from there. And so you can thinking about things to do in retirement. Well, the first thing you can do is, activities that turn me on now. And so you make this branch, and then you have sub-branches. And you can have things like going to the movies, TV, flea markets. You can have even work, right? And then you can have another branch starting from the center, activities that turned me on in the past. It could be things that you tried in the past, but you kind of gave up because you're too busy at work. And it could be things like chess, swimming, tennis, political meetings. I have a real great story about the political meetings part of it, but anyway, and then you can do another branch called New Activities I've Thought of Doing, but I never got around to it. So you could put in there activities such as working as an actor, night classes, volunteering, business courses. And then you can have another branch activities that will get me physically fit. So you could put in, aerobics, cycling like I do, playing tennis, running, golfing, going for walks. And then you could put another branch in there and even put it on another page on travel, what you could do in traveling activities. You could have exotic destinations. You could have travel to visit friends, travel to go out and rent a cottage out in lakes. Or you could even do sports travels and cruises. Heck, I just signed up for a blues cruise myself in going out to San Diego in late October. It's going to cost me about $8,000. But let me just get back to the Get a Life Tree, where I mentioned on that activities that turned me on in the past, political meetings. Back about, I'm not sure, it was, I think 2014, I got an email from a guy in United Kingdom, Ian Swales. And he told me, Ernie, he says, I just got to let you know that I read your book, The Joy of Not Working, way back, and I wanted you to retire by 50 years old after reading your book. And I actually retired by 48 or something like that. He said, but then I was wondering what the heck to do with my retirement. And I went through your Get a Life Tree. I did all that. And there was the thing about political meetings. And he said, so I thought, geez, I was kind of in politics before. Maybe I should try to take it up. So he decided to run in I think it was, what would have been 2010 election in the United Kingdom for the Liberal Democrats. It turned out he surprised everyone, including himself. It was the biggest swing from one party to another, and he ended up, being an MP in London. And then in his letter, he had said, in his email, he said, but he was going to step down in 2015 because politics was taking a lot of his time. But I happened to go to London in 2016. I actually hooked up with Ian, and he actually still has, permanent pass to the Parliament grounds. And he took me for a tour of the Parliament grounds and to places, that tourists can't even go. And there was an incredible tour that I got. But yeah, I met this guy, and he went into politics just because of that Get a Life Tree of mine, he said. So yeah, it can be pretty powerful if you start using it.
It's having spent a bit of time in politics myself, Ernie, the contributions that retired folks make, to political activism and political campaigns. I mean, it's pretty incredible, and it's neat to see too. And you have some people that have been involved for a long time, but also some people who get involved for the first time, when they're older, and they seem to love it. It can be quite a life-changing experience. I was going to ask you about, are there that letter was really inspiring you read from that couple from Michigan, just kind of an explosion of creativity and exploration. And are there any particular patterns that you see in retired people or couples that, end up being kind of a recipe for happiness or thriving in the post-retirement phase? Anything that you see in common between when you get letters like that?
Well, I think the first thing is they're very active, and they're adventurous, and they don't, in general, they don't seem to complain too much. They don't have the victim mentality like is so prevalent in our society nowadays. And I'm a big advocate of people not being a victim of any type. I was watching an interview with it was Rubenstein doing Condoleezza Rice or whatever her name is, and she ended off. He asked her, "What's the advice, most important advice you would give people?" And she said, "Never consider yourself a victim, because if you do, you've given your control of your life to someone else." And I really like that. I had to write that down. And yeah, so you gotta be adventurous. You gotta be creative, and somewhat of a risk taker. If you want to do some traveling, you gotta if you want to do some kind of like adventure travel, or you've never been to Europe or something like that, there are certain risks involved. Last year I went to London. I'm going to London again here in 2 weeks. But last year I went to London and I decided to go to Prague by myself. I always wanted to go to Prague, so I decided to fly to London and then fly to Prague for 3 days and come back. And I so I didn't know anyone there, but I was flying in on Wednesday, and I checked in meetup groups, and darn it, there was in this meetup group of people in not far from where I was staying at, and on Wednesday night, and I signed up, and it was mainly millennials who are they're all speak English. Most of them don't speak Czech, but they're working. They're there from Italy and Romania and you name it, and Poland, and so I went there, and yeah, it was a great time. And 2 days later, I even took two young women for dinner. How's that for a 68-year-old guy, right? Taking two 27-year-old women for dinner. But I was adventurous. I went to the, like I said, that meetup group, and then I told those two women that if they hadn't known each other either, but they got to know each other through me. And I told them I would, if one could recommend a good restaurant, I'd pay for the meal and give them each a copy of my book, Life Secret Handbook, which I believe I already sent you, didn't I? The leather edition?
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
yes, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my expensive business card. That's my book with swagger, I tell people, but that's another story.
What you've been saying triggers a couple of things that I remember noting when I went through the wisdom, the Proverbs in Life's Secret Handbook. You've mentioned Condoleezza Rice talking about control, and one of the things I remember you're saying in Life's Secret Handbook was, imagine that you're in control of your life. Now the question is, why do you have to imagine this? And I remember thinking that hit me right between the eyes. It's, oh my God, the objections, the problems are at least partly in my own head. And I thought that was just great. And the other one that you reminded me of is about risks and so on. With my life in investments,
yeah.
You realize that all investment come with some form of risk, but also there is no other way to have an opportunity. You have to take some risk if you want an opportunity. And the thing is to find something with not a big risk, but a big potential opportunity. And if you can do that, that's terrific. And both those pieces you captured beautifully in Life's Secret Handbook.
Yeah. I should actually, find Condoleezza Rice's address and send her a copy. I'm going to do that. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Yeah, so the risk taking, being adventurous, I think that's very important. And also I would you've read that the companion book for Life Secret Handbook, haven't you? Look, Ma, Life's Easy.
Oh yes, I did.
Yeah. So that's where I have the easy rule of life in there. So that applies to retirement. Where I say, do the easy and comfortable in life, and life will turn out difficult and uncomfortable. But if you do the difficult and uncomfortable, life will turn out to be easy and comfortable, right? So that's where it is. It's a lot easier and more comfortable not to take risks. But then your life becomes really, really boring, right? But if you start taking those risks, it's kind of difficult and uncomfortable to do that type of thing. Then life, it'll be more easy and comfortable because you get a lot more satisfaction out of things you're doing. You get satisfaction out of things that, there's some risk involved, there's some work involved. And that applies to retirement as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I want to go back to a second just to the idea of creativity, which you've talked about a lot, Ernie, and I really like that. And, it's interesting. A lot of what you describe as being so great about retirement are not so much things that you're not doing, but things that you're out doing and things that you're out creating and new things that you're learning. And part of what it makes me think about is that's often not how we describe it as a society. Retirement is kind of stopping work, and it's defined by stopping something. And part of what I'm wondering is, in order to get this kind of flourishing of creativity, which you might even think of as untapped creativity in so many folks, do we need to think about the concept differently? Do we even need to kind of have a different name for it? What do you think about that?
You mean a name for retirement?
It could be a name for retirement, or maybe we just need to change some of our mindsets when we talk about it. Because I'm just reflecting on, often in our world, when we talk about retirement, it's accompanied by anxiety about not having enough money, It's accompanied about the fear of having to work longer. It's accompanied by, issues of social isolation and all these kind of negative thoughts that are not as much linked to the kind of creativity that you're talking about so eloquently.
See, that's one of the reasons I brought out the new book, The Joy of Being Retired, because retirement has been given a bad name lately, and people are, a lot of people saying, we should do away with retirement and get rid of the word. People should make people work longer, and which I could probably use that letter from the police officer. But the thing is that studies show that people, something like 75% to 80% of people who retire, and this includes people low income who don't have a lot of money, they are happier in retirement than they were at working. They like the freedom. They enjoy retirement. They don't want to go back to working, right? And because of all the things, I mentioned some of those things, the politics at work and having to commute and get up and rush, and your health. And, I think it's just a matter of, I'm not sure if there's, the problem is that certain people don't. Certain people don't like retirement because I guess they need someone else to set things up for them. That's why they go and get a job. But there's this other aspect of it. People think, well, okay, I'm not going to retire until I'm 70 or 75. Then I'll do the traveling. Well, guess what happens? Your health starts failing, and then ends up most people don't go traveling, or they end up passing away. And that's where I'll bring in this letter that I got from Kevin Katamoto in Honolulu, Hawaii. And I'm not sure when I got this letter. It must have been about 2010. He said, "Aloha, Mr. Zelinski. Your books have had a profound impact on my life. I have passed them on to dozens of police personnel that I work with. I'm a police lieutenant with the Honolulu Police Department. Please know Hawaii 5-0 jokes. We've heard all the lines from the tourists." He goes, "Police work in paradise has been wonderful, but after reading your 2 books, I'm convinced that there is more to life than work. I'm only in my 40s, but all of a sudden, I'm contemplating leaving my safe harbor, as Mark Twain said, let the tradesmen catch my sails and explore, dream, and discover." He goes, "Here's a tough question. There are always pros and cons for early retirement, right? You can really take the pro or con side and use science, social studies, anecdotal accounts, or financial planning and come up with a great debate for either side. Since coming across your book at an airport bookshop, I've read everything I can get my hands on early retirement, and I'm still confused." He goes, "How do you make a life-changing decision like this? If I retire from the police department, it's not like I can say, oops, I made a mistake. Can I have my job back? It doesn't work like that way in government." He says, "How do you know when it's the exact right time to leave? I mean, some days you're having a horrible day and you're ready to retire that very minute. And other days you're having a great time that you think you can do this forever." And he goes, "I flip in and out. Anyway," and then he goes, "Anyway, regardless, I still want to thank you for your books. They're really life-changing in the way that they stimulate new ways of thinking." And he says, Now I know I'm going to retire young enough to enjoy this fantastic world that we live in. It could be this year or next year or next year, but soon." So anyway, this letter I read several times, and I kind of felt like I really had a relationship with this police officer. So in 2017, I went to Honolulu my first time, and I thought maybe I should try to look up this police officer, see how well I was doing in retirement, and I kind of didn't even get around to it. But I went to Honolulu again last year in 2018, and I thought, well, I'm going to try and look this guy up. And I went down on Waikiki Beach. There's a police station there, and I walked in, and there was a young woman police officer, and I asked, did you know this guy, Kevin Katamoto? And she said, "Yeah." I said, "What's he doing, And she goes, "Well, I think he's just retired. He's doing a whole bunch of things." That's all she said, right? And I couldn't get any contact information. But anyway, I went back to the Starbucks at the Honolulu at Alamana Hotel that I always go to, and I thought, well, let me see if I can come up with anything on this guy by doing a search, and I'm pretty good at search. And darn it, if I didn't come up with, I found an obituary for him. He had passed away at 53, right? So my whole point about this, and didn't say how he passed away, but and I found out that he had actually retired because there were some retirement photos of him. So at least he got 3 years of retirement in. So my whole point about this is you don't know how long you're going to live, right? Some people think they're going to live to be 80 or 85 or 90. Now they're talking about all these things, but it doesn't work that way for everyone. So, yeah, you may think, well, I'll work another 10 years and then I'll retire after that. Heck, you may die in 2 or 3 years like Kawamoto did, right? So anyway, I just bring that up. To me, it's kind of really weird because I thought I'd meet this guy, but no, he passed away.
I'm so sorry to hear that, particularly since you'd given them all those new ways of thinking and everything.
Yeah, well, apparently he did retire. He was retired for 3 years, but they never said how he passed away. It could have been anything. It could have been like Tony Buzan, and he was in great shape, although he was much older. Tony Buzan was 77 or 78, but Tony Buzan died of a massive heart attack, right? And this happens to to people in their 50s still. And Kevin Kawamoto looked in great shape too. He was very, he wasn't overweight or anything like that. But I just bring that up because it's a very important point that a lot of people miss all the time about. They think they're going to live forever and can do all those things in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do want to share is, I'm younger, so I'm 39, and often you hear about younger people saying, I don't want to think about retirement. It's not a relatable concept. But I find one way that that I've tried to think about it is, if I think about what I want my life to look like when I'm older, I tend to gravitate to some of the issues, Ernie, that you've talked about, which is friendship. And when I think about that, what are the people that I want to be surrounded by when I'm that age? It then makes me think, okay, well, what do I need to do now to cultivate those friendships? What do I need to do now if I want to spend time, serving community in a particular way to lay the groundwork for that? And it actually makes the concept much more engaging because it really brings it back to your life today. And it's kind of a no regrets thing to do, like thinking about, just going back to what you talked about at the beginning, purpose, community, the structure of your life. Those are no regrets things to do, I think, at any point in life. And if thinking about retirement is your excuse for doing them, then so much the better because, it's always worth giving thought to those things. And the example you shared, the tragic example you shared is a good reason why. Yeah,
and there's always, those other things you can do like people never get around to do. And I know you've written a book, haven't you? But, people talk about something like 82% of the population want to write a book and think they've got a book in them, but only 3 or 4 or 5% of the people get around to writing a book, right? And in The Joy of Being Retired, I give on it's recent number 61. I said you can finally get around to writing a book. Here are 10 non-financial reasons to write a book. Writing a book will get you out of your comfort zone. You will learn new skills and keep your mind in shape. You will develop more curiosity and be more open to new ideas. You get to share your unique message with the world. You will feel a sense of accomplishment when it is finally completed because it is a lot of work. When you hold your book in your hand, you've beaten the odds. A little over 85% of adults want to write a book. Only 5% do. You can have a big celebration when you finish the book and give copies to friends, relatives, and even strangers. You will get more respect from others. You get to meet a lot of interesting people by having your book with you at all times, which I always do, by the way. And you will leave a legacy to your children and grandchildren because your book is something tangible and long-lasting. And, so that's the reason to write about it. And I have 10 more reasons further down, but those are good enough.
Just thinking in terms of friends, community, structure, and all that stuff, we very often think of retirement and talk about retirement for an individual. But one of the lessons that I got from my in-laws was that when there's a partnership, there's two people involved in the marriage, when one person retires, it does affect the other one.
Yep.
And any thoughts that you care to share with us on the person and the partner in retirement?
Well, I'm not really a good person to talk to about this because I'm basically single. I mean, I just read the letter from the Jack and Karen Cipriani, and he talked about how it actually strengthened their marriage. Obviously, they enjoy each other's companies, and they were doing all these things together. But I think with some people, that's not necessarily so, that they have to give space to each other's, right? And I think there's been a book or two written about that. I know there's one. I think there's 2 books written on that. So they would be more the experts on it, right? And it's just like if you want to keep working a bit in retirement, which is okay with me, and because I kind of do that. And you're aware of Mike Drack's book, aren't you? Victory Lap Retirement.
Oh no, I haven't come across that one. Tell me.
You haven't?
No.
Oh, Mike's in. I'll have to get the 2 of you in contact. Mike's in Toronto. Actually, he contacted me, and because he had read my book, and he did a book called Victory Lap Retirement. He even asked me to do the introduction. He actually did it with Jonathan Chevreau, but Mike.
Oh, and I know Jonathan. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I met. Yeah, and Jonathan, but I think Mike's now did a new version. I'm going to hook up with him in Toronto here at the Keg at late May after I get back from London. Then I go to Toronto for 3 days. But yeah, he's got this book. He talks about more of that aspect of doing some other work, job, fun work, in other words, that you've always wanted to do. And so it's a pretty good book. He's done quite well with it, 5,000 to 10,000 copies. Yeah, it's called Victory Lap Retirement.
Thank you.
Ernie, if I think we've got time for maybe one more question, I'll leave that to Don. But just before we wrap up, wanted to ask if listeners are looking to find out more about you and your work online, where are the best places to go?
Google my name, Ernie Zelinski, come to my website and Google my name. Then there's a whole bunch of things that come up, and including interviews with Joe Udo from Retired by 40. He lives in Portland, Oregon, and my books will come up all over the place, right? You punch in my name, and like I said, there's a bit of my website, yeah. And the books that are still in print are, Joy Being Retired and How to Retire Happy, Well, and Free, Joy Not Working, Look All Life's Easy. The one that you got, a special edition of Life Secret Handbook, is only out in the leather edition. It's priced really high. It may be out in a regular edition soon, but that'll take some time because the publisher's looking at it. But go out and purchase the Joy of Not Working or How to Retire Happy, Well, and Free or Joy of Being Retired. They're all good books, I think, just based on all the letters and emails and even telephone calls I get from people about the books.
I don't actually have a final question. I just have some final gratitude. Thank you very much. You have given me a lot of inspiration, wisdom, how to think differently. Yeah, the reader who wrote to you along those lines. Yeah, you've brought that. Thank you. You've brought that to me.
Yeah. Well, let me just finish off by. I think it was Wes Moss asked me when he interviewed me last week. He asked me, what's your biggest, kind of thing about retirement? I said, well, it would be the last paragraph into the preface of How to Retire Happy, Well, and Free, where I end the preface saying, the way I see it, you will have attained true freedom in this world when you can get up in the morning when you want to get up, go to sleep when you want to go to sleep, and in the interval, work and play at the things you want to work at, play at, all at your own pace. The great news is that retirement allows you the opportunity to attain this freedom. So for me, retirement is about freedom. That's the big thing. This is the point I want to make.
And Alex, that's something for you to look forward to. I'm actually living that right now. Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ernie.
I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Don. Welcome again to The Personal Touch, that short final part of our Life 2 podcast in which my goal is to take the insights that our global experts give us in their interviews and try and adapt them for the ordinary person so you can make your own life better and more practical and more fulfilling. And that is my purpose with the personal touch. Today's episode is called Get Set. We've talked about getting started and about getting serious. Now we're talking about actually getting set for life too. The final preparations before, as I think of it, liberating ourselves from the daily routine. And these preparations probably fall into the time period of the last 5 years or so of living life one, our full-time working careers. And our expert is Ernie Zelinski, who knows and has written about what it takes and what's necessary, and has given the world all sorts of ideas for actually doing constructive things. Like Jonathan Clements, Ernie's books are too wide-ranging for us to capture them in just one interview. So let me identify and summarize from everything Ernie has written and said some aspects that I hope will be helpful and practical for you. Ernie had a number of anecdotes, stories about people who have made the transition to joy in retirement. Part of it comes from new ways of thinking, which you'll recall a Hawaiian policeman got from reading his books. And that leads me to the huge expansion in my own way of thinking that I got when I Googled reinvent yourself on the internet. And I found that many people mentioned Ernie's Get a Life tree. So I thought I'd go direct to the source for myself. I got his book, the first of many that I got, and this one was How to Retire Happy, Wild and Free. And his Get a Life tree was mind-blowing. I hope it helps you too. We didn't have time to describe it explicitly in the interview, so let me summarize it here. It's a tree because a tree has interconnecting branches rather than just a list, which doesn't encourage connections. So, on a blank sheet of paper, draw a box in the middle and write down the theme you're going to consider. Maybe travel or physical fitness or general options for my retirement or whatever. Draw a big X across the page with the box at the intersection. So now you have 4 branches of the tree. 3 of the branches are going to relate to activities that turn you on now, activities that turned you on in the past, and activities you've thought about for the future. The 4th branch on any page is any other aspect you like. Those are the 4 branches of the tree. Along them, write your principal ideas relating to that theme that you put in the box in the middle. Write down notes about those ideas. Those notes become secondary branches. These could give rise to a 3rd level. Maybe they're like leaves on the tree. The tree will end up with branches and leaves spreading in many directions. And by the way, if your own imagination can't do it, Ernie's book has hundreds of suggestions. I found that very helpful. That's all I have time for here. I've used his book a lot. It's the best approach I've found for identifying how to fill your time in a satisfying, in a really fulfilling way. It's quite possible that whether you avoid boredom and depression will be determined by the nature of your leisure activities. Now, your leisure activities take place in the context of the rest of your life. And remember, as always, your social activities and keeping fit are important. I'll say no more about that. You ought to be well aware of those aspects by now. In addition, while so far you may have been focusing on your financial plan, this is the time when it becomes important to think also about the psychological and practical aspects of making the transition to life too. If you're afraid that you may have serious doubts about your identity, the question of who you'll be once your job no longer defines you, answering that very important question, who am I, is the topic of Walk 8 in my Life 2 book. But let's leave that for the next podcast episode. Now, Ernie's Get a Life tree helps you to make spending your time consistent with who am I? And remember what he said, start to identify the experiences that satisfy you and make you happy. Explore ways in which you might give something back to society. That is always satisfying on both levels, defining yourself and spending your time. Okay, how about those standards I've been identifying for your financial progress? The minimum standard at this stage is to have that income mindset. You remember, that's where you convert your thinking from how much wealth you've accumulated to how much income you'll be able to generate from it for the rest of your life. Because our lifestyle is characterized by regular income and regular spending, not lump sums that come at the start of life too. So by now, As a minimum, you should be doing those personal funded ratio calculations I've talked about. You'll find a lot of help in that regard from Walk 18 in my Life 2 book, where I show how to use the calculator and how one couple's calculations turned out and the insights they got from doing this exercise. It's also time to understand investment risk and to customize your own investment glide path. How much risk should you be taking? Well, that's a personal issue, and while I can't tell you what's the most appropriate answer for you because I don't know you, as I keep saying, Walk 19 in the Life 2 book tells you how to decide on the amount of risk that best fits not only your financial, but also, very importantly, your psychological makeup. And you know, that is really the minimum standard at this stage. Everybody really ought to get at least that far. So what's a really successful standard? That's when your mortgage and credit card debt are gone, your children's education is paid for, you yourself are on target for your retirement financial goals without having to increase your contributions. You'll remember Jonathan Clements mentioning these things in his episode when we talked in general terms about financial stages in life. And it adds to your success if now you're starting to understand longevity, your own longevity as well as your partner's longevity. And remember, we usually underestimate how long we're likely to live. And you've started to think about post-retirement aspects like healthcare and long-term care. You know, all of that, if that's what you're doing, this means you are really very successful in your preparations and thinking at this stage. Is it possible to be even more advanced than that? Yeah, it's possible, though very, very few are at this point, at this time of life. You are truly exceptional if you're ready to start considering your legacy to your children, or even starting to make it available to them in small amounts now. And you're searching for, or you may even have found, a financial professional. By the way, if you're thinking about or dealing with a financial professional, Walk 22 in the Life 2 book becomes relevant because it tells you what to include in your conversation with the professional. Okay, that's it from me, my personal touch on getting set for Life 2. I hope you found it helpful. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Life 2 podcast. To purchase Don's latest book, visit donezra.com. And for more information on any of our guest experts, check out Commonwealth's website at cwretirement.com/podcast.